Wow, off to a terrible start already this morning. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, we're so sorry about that. Um, been doing the webinars for just over 2 years now, and I still seem to find new and creative ways to have the system do not what I wanted. Anyway, good morning, everyone. This is Mike Dane with MLS Technology. Um, I did want to run through just a couple basics about our webinar real quick before we get started. Everybody's going to be starting on mute by default. I wanted to also point out that now the video is gone. I'm so sorry. I wish I could blame this on the weather, but it is just me today. All right, you guys are going to be starting on mute by default. There's a Q&A section down at the bottom of the screen. If you guys have any questions, funnel those into there. We have a chat section down at the bottom as well, where you guys can add any commentary, examples, anecdotes, etc. We also are going to be recording this session. I'll be sending a link to it after class is over. But if you have any audio or video issues during the course, please let me know immediately. We don't want anybody to miss out on the CE credit. So if you guys are having problems, just let us know. Again, sorry for the little bit delayed start. We'll get the CE credit sent off before the end of the month. You should see that on your license. All right, let's get that out of the way. So since we're already kind of off to a little bit of a delayed start, I'm going to go ahead and just get started immediately. So we're going to be talking about Matrix today. Matrix is the central MLS system that you guys have access to through the MLS. And what that means is that you guys are going to be able to find all of the listing data, as well as enter listing data, as well as some extra features that we've slowly added to Matrix as time has gone on. For instance, we now have a tax record search that's built in. There's a couple extra tools for stats. We've got a brand new section here for contacts that's been reworked over the last couple of years. So there's a lot of really cool features that we're going to start talking about. But first, we want to talk about our homepage. So getting into Matrix is fairly simple. Get into mlstechnology.com, and then there's going to be a link here for Matrix. When you guys first get into Matrix, it's going to land you on a homepage that looks similar to this, but might not be laid out the same. Now, the layout of all of these widgets, which is what these little sections are called, is actually something that you guys can modify at any time. So when you click and drag from one of these address bars up the top, you can move this around into a position that's going to be better for you. I would very strongly recommend that you guys put a lot of thought into how this is laid out, not necessarily because you want to have to think about this every time you get in, but it's just try and save you the time whenever you do sign into the system and you need to just dive directly into, let's say, my active listings, and you just dive right into it, or go straight into the Bartlesville property search that I had set up. So if you notice that there's something that you guys are using often, try to make sure that it's going to be occupying the space that's towards the top of the screen so that you don't have to scroll down to try and find it. Similarly, if you guys have something that you guys aren't using too frequently, but you do end up wanting to maybe expand it, contract it at will, there is a little collapsible section here that you guys can use to just kind of minimize it to get it out of the way. And then if you end up finding that there's something that you don't want to use anymore, you can hit a little X right up here at the top to put that under the additional section. When you do, that'll show up under this additional widget. Just as a reminder, you do have the option to collapse that. So if you notice that things have just gone missing completely, make sure that you expand your additional section out, and you'll find, here's my favorite home searches. Just click and drag to bring that back onto the screen. Add my market watch back onto the screen. And again, just clicking and dragging the title bar of the widget allows me to move it back onto the homepage for me. Simple. So make sure that you lay this out in a way that's going to make sense to you. This is going to save you guys a lot of time in the long run. I used to actually teach a class on how to do that to people who used computers all day. And it made a world of difference. We used to have someone who took 12 minutes to do something, and then by the time we were done teaching about how to use tabs and not having a dozen windows up at the same time, She got it down to being like 4-minute long tasks instead. So optimizing your workspace like that can save you a pretty substantial amount of time every day. But that's about it for our homepage. We're going to come back here to run a search in a minute. But before we do that, we need to make sure one more thing is all set up. Up at the top right corner, there's going to be a section there that has your name and then a little arrow pointing down. When you click on that arrow, you're going to have an option for settings, help, mobile, or log out. For those of you guys who are already a part of a team, you might have the ability to switch between some of the other agents that you're a team member with. But there's also a button here for settings that we're going to be exploring. When you click on settings, over here on the top left, we've got a My Information section. This is where you can find all of the information that's going to be sent out whenever you send a listing to someone or whenever somebody's looking at your listings. This is the information that will be shown in Matrix. So what I would very strongly suggest that you do is double check this information to make sure that your name is spelled correctly, that you have the right email address. If you guys would like to add in any phone numbers, make sure that those are put in there. But if you notice that there's something that's incorrect in here, this is going to be data that came directly from our membership information. So whenever you guys initially became members of our association, or if you guys recently had moved to a new office, it'll end up showing the information here. If it's wrong, that means that we need to get it corrected with our membership data. There is still kind of a backup option. So for instance, if your name was Robert, but you prefer to go by Bob, up here at the top, you may have all of your bills coming to Robert. But then if you need to maybe advertise yourself as Bob, since that's what all your marketing says, that's what your website says, that's what all your profile says, just use this override option, and then you can change it to Bob. There you go. So that way you guys don't have to worry about maybe changing member data where your bills are going to be coming, et cetera, when really you just need to change how you're being marketed. But that being said, I'm going to move on next to our header and footer section. So on the header and footer, it's actually going to be combining some of the information that we've already created. So here's my name, my email address, that cell phone number that I put in. I can choose how that actually appears on the headers and footers of the prints that I send off. So if I have a report that I've created or a quick CMA that I've put together, all that information is going to come packaged with a little header that appears at the top of that sheet. When you guys first get into the header and footer section, if you had never been in there before, it's going to be offering you some basic templates that you can use. I'm just going to grab this basic blue, hit preview, and this will show me my template that shows up. I've got just some basic information in here. And if I need to make changes to that, I can come down here and change that to be my office phone number and put my cell phone number on the top. So notice these drop downs are what's actually changing the information that's appearing there. I also uploaded a custom photo here. So if I wanted to, I can use custom photo. There's an upload option. Once you guys have that in there, it'll just appear over here to the left. This is only going to appear on your prints, but it's nice to have that on there. Just as a reminder, always use the same headshot everywhere that your face is going to appear. This is just a matter of repetition. The more you show the same exact image, the same exact logo, the same exact spelling of your name, et cetera, all of that's going to contribute to the client, intentionally or not, memorizing your information so that they're more likely to associate if they're thinking of real estate with you, if they're thinking of realtors with you. So always make sure that you're using the same content everywhere that it appears. There is also an option over here to upload a custom banner. So in addition to having a custom photo, if you guys do have a custom banner you would like to add, that's maybe a branded version of the banner so that your company can use the same logo, et cetera, there is that upload a custom banner image option as well. Speaking of custom banner images, right now, since I had chosen one of the pre-formatted themes, it's just automatically doing this white text with this yellow text for the links. If I've uploaded my own custom banner, like let's say I've got a Chenoweth and Cohen one, so it's all black and then it's got the little kind of gold looking icon. I can come down to use custom colors, and change the colors that I'm going to be using for the text to maybe match the, okay, to maybe match the colors that we're using for the rest of the content. So you guys can make changes there. And then down here at the very bottom, it's going to be pretty much the exact same features and functions, except it's just going to appear at the very bottom of the reports that you create. You can always turn this off entirely if you would like to, but there is an option to at least get some extra information. This is usually where I recommend people put their address. So content for reaching out to people, the actual contact information up at the top, and then down here at the bottom, we've got our footer with just some additional information, and that's it. All right. Next, we've got our CMA cover sheet. This is something that we're not going to be discussing in class today, but the CMA report is a comprehensive report that you can send out to clients in regards to their specific property. It'll include a bunch of extra cool features that are built into it. It's relatively easy to use. We do cover it in our CMAs and Matrix class. So if you guys are interested in learning about that, we'll be having a 1-hour CE credit class that goes over just how to create CMAs. And the last portion of class actually covers the CMA report that this cover sheet will appear in. But easy enough to understand this. It's just you're going to be adding some content that'll appear on a specific report. So just as always, make sure that you got all the information that you want put in here. Next, we've got our email signature section. Again, this one's a really simple one. Grab whatever the email signature is that you're using in whatever system that you guys are sending emails with, paste it in here, you're good to go. The good news is that when you copy from elsewhere, it's going to remember all of the font information. It's going to remember what color it was. You can't really see it, but this is kind of a slate gray. It remembers the exact color that I chose whenever we were putting together our corporate branded email signature. And it also kept my photos that I had uploaded as well. So I've got my certificate here. I've got my company logo here. All of it just pasted in the exact same way it's going to appear in my emails. So that, again, is going to allow for some continuity to the client so that they don't have to worry because they see the exact same signature coming from you when you send it from your Outlook, as well as when you send it from Matrix. Now, the final tab on here is One Home. Again, this is important information because just like all of the rest of the stuff, this is the stuff that the client is going to see. Now, the header and footer is only going to appear on reports, a CMA. You might not be making one for every client. Email signature is going to appear pretty frequently, so that might be important to do. But the most important thing that you guys need to double check in here after your information is set up is the One Home section. One Home is actually going to be the name of the portal that your clients are going to be visiting whenever you send them any information. So what we're looking at here is whatever photo it is that you guys have uploaded. Again, make sure you're using the same headshot. This is the photo that's going to appear whenever you send a listing to a client. They're going to see that image of your face. A little further down, we're going to have the contact information that will show up in that portal. So again, it's important that this is all up to date and ready to show to people because of the fact that this is actually where they're going to be seeing your information the most. So they're not necessarily going to be checking you out on your website, but if you send them a link, they're going to be checking that out. They're not going to necessarily be looking at your Facebook profile all the time, but if you guys set up an auto email, this is the information that they're going to see whenever they're looking at those listings. So make sure that it's all up to date, correct. Down at the very bottom, you do have an option to add in just a little bit of a blurb about yourself. And there's also a section here that you can add in a video link. So if you guys have like a introductory video to you, or maybe an office video or something like that, you guys can put in a link to that video here. Just as a kind of side note, heads up, this is the only place that we actually allow YouTube video links to be added in Matrix. We'll be talking a little bit later about virtual tours that you can add to listings, and those virtual tours cannot be added on YouTube. It does have to be Vimeo or doing the, what is it called, Google Drive. You can upload to Google Drive for free, share the link, and it's completely unbranded. So lots of different options, but Again, make sure that you guys go up to the top here, go to settings, make sure that all of your information is correct, set up your header and footer, and make sure that your email signature and OneHome are both ready to go. Now, the reason we wanted to make sure that this was all out of the way is because everything else that we're going to be doing in class today is going to be finding listings, and those listings might be of interest to a client. So if we have all of these ducks in a row first, we don't have to worry about, well, I just send something off to somebody. They may never even talk to me again because I didn't set up my contact information or my email signature or portal with my information on it. So make sure that all of that's set up and ready to go. We're going to head right back to my matrix. Now, back on our home page, we have, again, just a couple basic things on here. I'm going to be sending you guys a video tutorial link. You don't have to watch it, but there's a tutorial link that I'll be sending that covers how to deal with hot sheets and market watch. But I want to actually start up with this widget up here at the top right. The rest of these are mostly self-explanatory, but this search function does have a couple limitations. If you guys are searching for a specific property, all you'll need to enter is going to be the house number and the street name. Now, just from a very practical example, those of us on the service desk will get phone calls about all sorts of different things. But one of the things that we almost always will end up asking people for is, what is the MLS number that you're working with? Now, not everybody always has that on their hand. Maybe they might be in the car. Maybe there's more reason to remember the address for a property than there is to memorize that 7-digit number. So we always use this house number and street name whenever we're searching for listing information because it's just way easier than almost any other search function that we have in our system. If I just needed to dive directly into a specific address, I just start typing in house number and then put in the street name. Now, in my case, I'm going to be looking for a property. It's 33200 East 151st Street South. Now, you notice here, I'm just putting in the house number, so the 33200. And in this case, the street name is actually just 151. Now, it's going to be searching for anything that was 151st, so that ST doesn't need to be added. It's going to be searching for anything that has east, south, north for the pre-directional, post-directional, and the street type doesn't matter either. So if it was street, avenue, boulevard, it doesn't matter. It's just going to be searching for just these two specific parts of that address. Now, under normal circumstances, that's probably more than enough information than you'll ever need to be able to find the properties that you're looking for. But if we hit the search button, you may notice that there are some properties here that are houses and a couple properties here that are actually just completely vacant land. So if you do find yourself in a situation where it's not finding everything that you need, there is actually a search function that allows you to search for the exact address. It's just that it's going to require a couple extra steps. So when you guys are searching on the home page, just remember it's just the house number and then the street name, just the name, nothing else. Now, when I ran this search, I wanted to point out what our search results are going to look like. We're going to see plenty more of this later, but I wanted to take an opportunity to talk about our MLS numbers. So for each listing that we have entered into the system, there is going to be an MLS number assigned to that. So in this case, we actually have a 6-digit number up here, 7-digit number here, another 6-digit number down here. This is kind of giving us a little bit of a heads up on exactly how we actually do the MLS numbers. Every year, we actually change the first 2 digits of our MLS numbers to be different numbers. So for instance, this particular listing has 15 at the beginning. So when I click into this, I can see, oh, this was entered in 2015. If I go to the next listing on here, we've got 18 at the beginning, and we've got 2018 is when this listing was entered. So if you guys do find yourself in a situation where you're just looking at a bunch of results and you're like, oh, wait a second, why is there a 21 in here instead of a 22? Well, that listing has been in the system for potentially at this point 5-6 months. So it's kind of a little heads up as to what year the listing was entered, but beyond that, the rest of the numbers are just in chronological order. You have The first listing that was put in 2022 would have just been 22000001. So we also have the status, school district, and price are our sort functions. Since everything else that we're going to be discussing today is going to revolve around those active listings, I did at least want to take this opportunity to point out that that status function, which is actually one of the default sort methods, is actually going to be sorting by active, pending, closed, expired, withdrawn, and released. So in this case, the only things that we're seeing here are closed, expired, and released. These are all the listings that sold. These are all the listings that did not get all the way through. But if you guys notice, we've got 2014, 2014, and then look at that. The one that sold is in 2015. We've got 2018, 2018 sold. We've got one that was a house that looks like it got released at some point in time. And then again, since this is in chronological order, we can see that there's an MLS number after that was entered, and that's the one that sold. So lots of different things that you guys can glean, even just from the cursory look at that initial search results page. All right, so let's move back to our homepage. We're going to stop going back to our homepage after every discussion, but right now we're actually going to start discussing the search functions. So beyond just our little super basic search that we have here, where we can put in maybe the status of the listing that we're looking for, the house number, the street name, or an MLS number, we do have some more robust search functions up here at the top under the search tab. Now, this search tab actually has 4 different property categories appearing here. It's going to be the residential, commercial, vacant land, leasing, and then there's a 5th search type called cross property that allows us to search for any of the other 4 property types. So for instance, if I'm maybe just getting new to or getting used to a specific area and I'm kind of putting a finger on the pulse of the market, I can go to this quick cross property search and combine a residential search with a vacant land search. Or maybe I just am looking for residential properties and the client doesn't care whether it's a property for sale or for lease, especially with the difference between rental prices and purchasing a property now. That might be what a client may need. Or again, if I'm brand new to an area, I can just select one, hold down Control, click on the others, and just get all of the listings that are in Ada or all of the listings that are in Bartlesville. So we're going to be talking a lot more about these little sections and what they can do for us. But I did at least want to give you guys a little bit of an overview of what the search functions can do for us. This quick cross-property search isn't something that you guys might find yourself in often. Just remember that that exists, because everything else that we're going to be doing is going to be focused into just one property type. Now, in addition to our search functions for the properties that are listed, we do also now have the capability of doing the public record search as well. The public record search is going to pull data directly from Realist. So if you guys need to search for properties, data that was maybe from for sale by owner or something else, you guys can always go in here and search by the owner's last name, by the address. In fact, you can actually search for up to 5 addresses at the same time. And you can also choose which county you need to search within, or even provide just the tax parcel number to find the information. If worse comes to worse and you know where the property is located, but you don't know what the address is, there is actually a map search here that, I am so sorry. Give me just a second. I hear dripping. Okay, false alarm. My office is literally across the hall from the door that leads outside, and it is just pouring off the roof. So it's not in the building. We used to have a roof leak nearby here, but it's been fixed a while ago, thankfully. The renovations to the building have been fantastic, by the way. It's much better shape now. Anyway, so if you guys do end up needing to run a tax record search, there's plenty of options here to find things. So let's say that we had a specific address that we wanted to search for. We just type in even just a couple pieces of information. Again, I'm just breaking this down. So if it was 1373 South Riverside Drive North or something like that, we can put in all of that information. But if you notice, I just put in house number, street name, and down here at the bottom, I can see a live match count. So what this is going to do is, as I continue to enter information in here, it's going to show me how many properties actually match this single piece of criteria. And if I put in even just one more piece of information, I find my one match. So when I go to my results, I can see the data show up here, and notice this is in a pretty similar format to what we were just looking at, where we have a MLS number over here on the left, but now instead it's a tax parcel number. We have the address. If I click on that, it's going to show me, there we go. It's going to show me where that property is physically located. But if I click on the parcel number, this is going to pull over all the data from Realist so we can quickly find, all of the tax record details. But it also allows me to grab any of the last listing data. So if that property had been listed in our system before, we can see it. We can see any of the photos that had been attached to that particular listing, check the history of that property, both from the perspective of the MLS side of things, where we've got our listing data, as well as the public record sales. So if the property had sold outside of the MLS, we would still have access to the public records revolving around that. And then we also can see the mortgage history, which again, I've been teaching this class for 4 years now, and I have seen this have at least a couple pieces of information change on it. So we also have a parcel map section. So without having to click on the address like we did on the results, once we've clicked on the parcel number, we can see more parcel information on the 2 map tabs. So we see where it's physically located with a little purple overlay on top of it in the satellite view. We've got another map view that's going to show us our parcel dimensions. Just keep in mind again that these are just estimates. This might be 122.4. This might be 132.8. It just depends on how they're rounding or if they're rounding at all. So just take this all with a grain of salt. And then down towards the bottom, we've also got a map here where we can add in extra layers, like where the zip code lines are, county lines are, school district lines are, neighborhood lines, even the Tulsa flood zone map. We can add all of this extra detail into the map in case we ever need to verify what's happening. It looks like there's a neighborhood here. We've got a zip code here. We've got a Tulsa Public Schools, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, instead of adding the flood zone map here, FEMA one, if you guys go up to the top to the flood map option, you'll see a whole section that just goes over what the flood information is for that particular property, which, just as a funny side note on this very, very wet day, this particular property was actually almost hit by that storm that we had back in 2019. I don't know if you guys remember that crazy flood that we had, but the water line actually came right up to about here on their property. It was pretty wild. So this little outcropping that they had here actually moved back after that. And coincidentally, they were trying to sell their property, if I remember right. And because the flood line moved, they didn't. Anyway, speaking of which, in case you guys are wondering why we actually have the FEMA information, and then there's another option that's the Tulsa flood zones, this is why. Tulsa ended up deciding that they were going to add that extra layer of information so that we can now see a little bit more detail about how they actually expect floods to work. So this is a regulatory flood zone. If you guys need more information about the FEMA overlay, go to FEMA.gov. If you guys need more information about the Tulsa County flood information, you can always get in contact with the Tulsa County. All right. Anyway, let's head back to our search tab. I'm actually going to click on search this time because we've got a couple extra options on here I wanted to discuss. So we've got our 4 property types, again, that cross property. Here's our public record search. There's also going to be a quick search for agents, a quick search for offices, a property history search, and an open house search. I did want to at least focus in a little bit on this office and agent search, excuse me. On the office search, I'm going to just do, let's say, solid rock. This is going to show me my 6 matches. If you guys are searching for a specific office, you can find where those offices are physically located, what their phone numbers are, but it's also going to allow you to see which agents are in that office. So we can just click on our office agents, and this is going to show us everybody that happens to work in that office. And there's also going to be an option whenever you guys are searching either for a agent, or if you guys have searched for an office and then gone into the agents, where you guys can view their active listings. So again, worst case scenario, you guys end up getting a phone call from, say, Michael Urey, and he's like, hey, you know, I heard you got a client that might be interested in something up here in Claremore, blah, blah, blah. Here's the address. And lo and behold, you didn't have a pen or paper. You couldn't type it down fast enough on your phone, whatever the case may be. You don't have to put in the address information here, but if you know that that's the listing agent, I can just go into my agent search for their name, click on their name, click on their active listings, and lo and behold, hey, that's the listing I was looking for, and you can find out more about it. So very simple. Again, all of that's possible with just this agent search. Just as a heads up, and this is something that we cover in the 3-hour-long class, but we don't have time to cover it in the 2-hour-long version. But there is a search bar that's actually going to be following us no matter where you are in Matrix. It's this speed bar up here at the top. I can't stress how useful this thing is because I use this at least several times a day. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the same, that you guys are going to get the same mileage out of it, but I use this religiously. One of the things that I use the most on this is actually going to be this agent search. So we'll get phone calls from people and I might not have ever interacted with them before. But here I have a agent search that I can run. So that search that I just did, where I was looking for Michael Urey, I can recreate that up in the speed bar instead of going to search, typing in agent, then typing in their name, then having to run the search. I can just go up to the top here, do AG, indicating I'm doing an agent search, put in a space, and then do Michael Urey. Perfect. So right away, and even if I don't have their full name, I can still put in something. So if I wanted to just put in Phillips, it'll ask, did you mean first name or last name? So if I needed to find Robert Phillips, oh, that's right, he's not active right now. But anyway, if I needed to find somebody, I can put in their name. So you can also put MLS numbers in here. There's a bunch of other things, but again, take a look at this. There's a little question mark icon right here that you guys can click, and it'll give you guys a pop-up that explains how to use that speed bar, and it's very useful. Again, there will be a little video tutorial that I'll link to that. So if you guys are interested in using it, please take a look at it. Recommend that to everybody else that you know, because it's way more useful than I think people realize. Anyway, so let's actually dive into a more practical search now. So I'm going to go into the search, and we're going to just do a quick residential search since the vast majority of our users are using residential search property or residential property searches. So when you get into a quick residential search, or really just any of the quick searches, whether it's vacant land, commercial, whatever, you guys are going to find yourself in a situation where it's presenting you with a bunch of blank criteria with only one thing that the system has deemed a default option. And that's going to be this active button right here. So when you see this checkbox here for active, you know that whatever other criteria that you're putting in, it's going to be producing results that are just properties that are currently available for sale. So I did want to point out, if you do want to make a change to this, there is a default option up here at the top So if you guys only search within a certain county, or if you guys are only searching for certain property types, so like let's say I live down in Durant and I don't really work outside of the county too much, I'm going to set house, Brian, active, and maybe even if I had a price range that I'm typically working with, I can have all of that information put in there, go up to the top, set that as my search defaults, so that the next time I actually start a residential search, I can go back to my matrix, go back into my residential quick search, and look at that. It's already got house, Brian, and my price still put in there. I don't see too many people that are using that religiously. The county one might be extremely helpful, especially for those of you guys who work outside of Tulsa at all. A lot of people are like, why do I just find listings in Tulsa? Yeah, well, that's where the majority of our listings go. That's unfortunately just how things are with our population and housing density here. But if you do end up wanting to make any significant changes to this, the ones that I'm seeing the most are going to be the people that are putting in active, pending, closed, and expired for doing CMAs. I notice a lot of appraisers or people that are doing BPOs or frequently doing CMAs for their sellers may end up benefiting from having this built in there. But just as a heads up, that means that every time you guys try to come find a property that's currently for sale, you have to uncheck those checkboxes. So this starting default option is handy, but just keep that in mind that you're going to always see that every single time. Anyway, on here, we do have a couple extra functions. So for instance, if the properties that my clients are looking for is a house, I can put in house. If they want to include more items, just like we saw on the cross property search, I can hold down control and select multiple items at a time. Holding down control and then clicking on something that's selected will also deselect it. So if you guys have clicked on something and then realize, oh, they don't care what kind of property type it is, I can uncheck that checkbox or uncheck that item. We also have a section here in the center that's going to be entirely based on where things are physically located. So I usually try to tell people, all right, so if you guys are looking for properties, this center area here is going to be entirely based on the location of the property. So you've got what the status is of the listing. You've got what kind of property it is, any contingent information. So whether there's a contingent property, whether there's corporate relocation, if it's in foreclosure status, short sale, if it's a bulk listing or multiple parcel listing, where it's physically located. And then over here to the side, we've got all of the attributes of the specific property. So starting up here at the top, we've got our price range. The price range that we show here is actually going to be something that automatically gets turned into the thousands. That's what this little checkbox is indicating. If you guys do work with any lease properties, just as a heads up, it would be a good idea to uncheck that checkbox so that whatever the price is that you put in up at the top here is the price that you're going to be searching for. It's not going to automatically say, oh, hey, look, I put in 800 up here. Now you're looking for properties that are for lease for $800,000 per month, which I don't know about you guys, but as the landlord, that would be pretty great. But obviously that's not realistic. Uncheck that checkbox, we're good to go. But on the residential properties, probably wise to leave that checkbox checked. And there's a couple different ways for us to enter the price that we would like. So we can either do the range. We saw the range that I've entered earlier where we just put in one number and then go to another number, put a hyphen in between them, easy peasy. That checkbox over here is going to make sure that this is 200,000 to 300,000. Let's say that I do have a client with a hardline budget. They can't get any financing over 250,000. So I'll do 250 plus, or excuse me, 250 minus. And what that's going to do is say, this is going to look for 250,000. And then with that minus, it's going to be 250,000 or less. So if you find yourself with that kind of client where they can't look for anything over a certain amount, just put in that value, put in the little minus afterwards, easy. Now there is another option, just like we've got a minus, we've also got a plus. If you do find yourself with a client that maybe has like, I don't want anything under a certain value. Let's say you guys got that white whale client that's looking for anything 500,000 or more. You can put in the 500. It's going to automatically turn into thousands, put a plus in here. And now the only listings that are going to show up are 500,000 or more. Now, that's not particularly as reasonable a usage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a price range here, and let's use that plus for the bedrooms and bathroom count instead. So I got a client that's looking for properties between these price ranges. They want to make sure that there is at least 3 bedrooms, but if there's more bedrooms, that's not necessarily going to be a problem. If I had a spare bedroom, oh no, I'm going to turn it into a study or go play VR games there or whatever. I can make use of that spare space, but I at least need to have the 3. Same thing goes with total bathrooms. One of the cool things about this is that it's going to be able to say, all right, I need 3 or more bathrooms. And since I know that I want to make sure that, let's say, I've got kids and I don't want to have to be competing for, getting ready in the morning with their bathroom time. So I can say 2 or more full bathrooms. What this is going to do is it's going to be checking for any properties that have 3 or more total bathrooms, which includes full and half. And I have to make sure that of those listings, there is 2 or more full bathrooms in there. So it could be all 3 bathrooms are full bath, or it could be only 2 of them and there's 5 bathrooms in the house and there's 3 half baths. It won't care. It's just going to be able to find these are the minimum specs, making sure to find any more than that is fine. Another thing that we wanted to talk about is this house square footage. So obviously we've got a range option, we've got a plus or minus option, but with the house square footage, there's going to be an extra little thing to have to think about. The house square footage can only come from one of 3 different sources in our system. This is kind of an unfortunate story, but a few years ago, or several years ago, I think, we had a listing that was entered into the system. At the time, we were able to allow the owner to give us a quote for what the square footage was of a property. Unfortunately, the owner was incorrect in what they assumed the square footage was. Maybe they'd been told something different, or maybe it was just a kind of fishtail where they had one thing at one point in time, and then it just kind of like kept on getting its number adjusted as the story was retold. Whatever the case may be, the square footage was completely wrong. So when they ended up buying the property, the buyers ended up getting an appraisal done, and lo and behold, the square footage was off by several hundred feet, or at least a few hundred feet. So hey, there's the fishtail going on. Anyway, the problem ended up being that we needed to have a definitive source for all of that information. So what we decided to do is we decided that we're going to either use the actually here, I'm just going to put this up on the screen so we can actually see this. We can do either the courthouse records. So if the county has the information on the record, we can keep that as the source. We can also use appraisals. And then we can also use the building permit. So what that means is that every single listing in our system has to have either the tax record information as the source for the square footage, an appraisal that they have paperwork for. So it's important to note, must have paperwork. Because if we do have someone that gets in contact with us and says, hey, this square footage doesn't seem to be correct. I went to an open house at that property and they're including the mother-in-law suite that's not attached to the house in the total square footage. Hey, look at that, that's not allowed. They must have the paperwork for what the appraisal is of the property. Same thing goes with the building permit. If somebody ends up deciding that they're going to put in a brand new listing that's completely brand new property, well, that building permit's going to be the only valid source of where what the square footage is, but you still have to have the paperwork. So court records is fairly simple. I can look that up in Realist. If it doesn't match, there might be a problem. But with our house square footage, we have to have one of those 3 sources. And if you do not have one of these 3 sources that's valid, maybe the house has been updated since the court last got information on it, there hasn't been an appraisal since those updates, or maybe the building permit is no longer correct because they've made additions, whatever the case may be, you cannot quote the square footage if you don't have one of these three sources. So if I end up doing 0 for my square footage, I will see that I currently have 2 properties that have 0 for the square feet. Now, that doesn't mean that these properties are in some weird nether space where they have 3 bedrooms, but they don't occupy any square footage. No, if we jump into these, we can see that this is a fairly large property, and it does actually have an estimate of the house size, but it has not gotten an appraisal on it. Maybe the building permit is no longer correct. And actually, just as a fun fact about this particular property, they're quoting that it's somewhere over 3,000 square feet. If I go to the tax record, the square feet that's actually referenced here is 1,600. So they've more than doubled the size of the property, or almost doubled the size of the property. So if you guys don't have a valid source, you can't quote the square footage, but that doesn't mean that you don't get to tell any prospective clients how large the property is. It's just that it has to be an estimate. It can't be an exact quote, because otherwise that could be considered false advertising, which is what that lawsuit was about. Anyway, just as a heads up, that second listing was quoted without any square footage, but also did not decide to show any of the estimated size, even though this is an extremely cute house and I would definitely live there. Anyway, I'm going to go back to our search and head back to our criteria. So even with all of the rest of this information in here, I've got a house size that I put in, and it's just going to be that 0. But let's say that I do have a client that has a specific house size that they were looking for, so they wanted it to be between 2 to 2.5 thousand. That's fine. If I just put in a 0, 2,000, 2,500, it's going to allow me to see all the properties that don't necessarily have a valid source, but I still want to at least see them. And then it's also going to allow me to see the house square footage range as well. So I can go to my results and see everything should fall in line with that square footage, except for, I'm going to sort by square feet. And I can see these 2 that are not showing the square footage. And I'll just have to individually go in there and find out what's going on with them. So just make sure that you guys are getting the complete view of all the properties that are available, even if they don't necessarily have the criteria that your client was looking for specifically. Just requires a little bit extra legwork on our side. All right. Now I wanted to show, I've got a whole bunch of things that I filled out. Let's say that I've added in a couple of extra details here and there. So here we go. I've got 2 matches. Wonderful. Neat. I can go to my results. I can check out those properties. If you guys are looking at a property, you can go back to the results page by clicking on single line display up here at the top. This will show you our results. We can go back to our criteria by clicking criteria at the top or down here at the bottom. And then if I wanted to make sure where these are physically located, there is a map search, map button, and map button. So 3 different places for us to be able to do this. But I've filled in a bunch of information on here. I just want to clear it out so we can start a brand new search. I did want to give you guys one heads up about that. If I click clear down here at the bottom, what this does is it actually clears all of the criteria. The only checkbox that I still have on my screen right now is the thousands, because this is just a system thing. But this clear also cleared out my active checkbox. So you may have noticed before we had somewhere around 2,000 matches. Now that I've cleared out that active from there, if I click on this 5,000 plus matches, you can see the total number of listings that we've had in our MLS since the beginning of time. If I end up doing a revision to this, like let's say, I don't know, check the checkbox for active again. Here we go. Back to the 2,277. Oh my gosh, there was literally a listing that was added in the last second. That's how our market's going right now, I guess. Anyway, next let's talk about our location-based searching. So again, I mentioned before that we've got our status, our qualifications, the attributes. In the center here, though, is our location searching. Starting up here at the top, we have our map search button. Again, this brings us to a map search that we're going to be talking about a little bit more after we get back from our break here soon. But immediately underneath that is going to be a proximity search that we can use. So let's say that I wanted to search within 1 mile of, and then I've got an address I'll put in here. There we go. So even before I've finished typing it, it's got an autofill option for me. I click that, and now I've got a map area selected. So if I go back to my map now, it's actually already drawn a circle around this central location, whatever the address was that I put in. There's a couple different ways for us to use this. Let's say that you guys actually are working with a property in this vicinity and you guys want to get a little bit of a CMA put together or just find out what's going on in the market. You can check these check boxes. I'm going to exponentially increase how many properties I've got. And lo and behold, here we are. So you can use this to do CMAs if you need to, or you can just use it to find out, all right, maybe this is where they work. And so subsequently, they don't want to work outside of maybe 5 miles of that property or where they work, which I don't know about you guys, but I hate commuting. So this might be a very crucial thing for me is to just be able to say, all right, I want to live within 5 miles of wherever it is that I work. So that's an easy way to set them up with something like that. If you do end up adding that to the map and then decide afterwards that we don't need it, there is a clear map button that gets rid of all of that. Again, we can also search by the address. You notice this is the exact same layout that we had when we were doing our tax record search: house number, street direction, street name, street type, post direction. And we can actually add up to 10 different property addresses. This could be especially handy if you guys are putting together a showing tour. So you can search for each of the individual properties' addresses, again, hoping that they're all active still, or you can just put in all of the MLS numbers up here at the top. But again, that requires some legwork of actually getting the MLS numbers first. Next sections down are going to be our school, city, county, and zip code. All of these are actually going to have a couple different extra options. When I start typing in a school district, so let's say I'm doing Broken Arrow, I start typing, it automatically finds it on the list and highlights it for me. I can do the same thing that we did with the house square footage. Remember, I did 0, comma, and then added in some extra criteria. The school district works the same way. So if I wanted to do Broken Arrow and then also include Bixby, now I've got Bixby and Broken Arrow selected on my list. I can even go in back to Jinx as well. Oops, if I can spell it properly. There we go, Jinx. So just adding in commas will allow you to add in more school districts. The exact same thing is going to be true if we go over here to the city. So I've got Broken Arrow, Bixby, Jinx. Oh, gotta get all the way back up there again. There we go, Bixby and Jinx. There we go. Just as a heads up, both of these lists are huge. I don't even know if it's going to show up properly on Zoom, but they're massive. I think we've got 300 school districts and then 600 cities. Actually, you know what, to verify that number, I'm going to just click on this little pop-up window icon here. And this is, oh, excuse me, 417 school districts. That's how many school districts we have in our system. When you guys click on these pop-up window buttons, it's going to give you guys a window that looks like this. It's the same exact list for the school districts over here. Same school search function right up here at the top. So if I just wanted to do, again, Broken Arrow, I can find Broken Arrow here. Now I just have to select it and then click on Add. That brings me over to the current selection. I'll do the same thing here with Bixby. Click on it, Add. And then when I click OK, it's actually going to be narrowing down that focus here up at the top. So it's already selected them and I'm good to go. Same thing goes again for the city, county, and zip code. I go over here to my city search. I got 622 cities in the system. So searching through that or even just scrolling through that's going to take a long time to try and find what I'm looking for. Just use the search, find what you need, add it, good to go. All right. We also have a subdivision search. This will be the last thing we discuss before we go on a break. The subdivision search is one of the few places in the system that actually is a wildcard search field. This is just going to be open text. So what I would very strongly recommend is that if you guys are going to be searching for a subdivision, Turn this into a wildcard search by adding an asterisk at the beginning of whatever you're typing. Add in the name that you were going to add. So in this case, I'll just do Eagle Ridge. And then we also have an asterisk at the end as well that's going to make sure that anything before and anything after will automatically be included. So in this case, if it was the Eagle Ridge Estates, it won't matter if there's a the before, and it won't matter that Estates comes after. It's just going to be searching for the words in between in this order, by the way. It's not going to be like Ridge Eagle or something like that. It'll always be searching for just these two in that order. All right, so that's about it for our basic search functions. We're going to talk about the additional fields and the map search function as soon as we come back from our break. It is just shy of 10 o'clock on a dot, so we will be back here at 10:10. If I could get everybody to hit that raise hand button, just want to make sure that everybody's still here and present. Since this is a CE credit class now, I do kind of just need to do a check-in from time to time to make sure that everybody's still here. So John, Alexander, I got, oh, gosh, I'm so sorry. Got your hand up. Steve, or I think it's Chance that may have actually, anyway, if you wouldn't mind hitting that raise hand button just so I know that you're here. But again, we'll take a 10-minute break. I'll see you guys when we get back. All right, we're back. And again, if I could get everybody to hit that raise hand button, I just want to make sure that everybody's back and we can go ahead and resume. So Stephen or Chance, I think it was Stephen that was registered, but if you wouldn't mind hitting that raise hand button. Excellent. All right, just wanted to make sure. All right, so everybody's back. We'll go ahead and get started again. So where we left off, we were talking about the search functions on the homepage or on the residential quick search. Let's now talk about the map search function. Now, the map search is actually one of the items that's going to be a little bit more open-ended. So what that means is that this is actually something that, we may not be dealing with property subtypes as often or having to worry about school districts or how many total bedrooms. But one thing that every property is going to have in common is that there's going to be some place that it's physically located, and we're going to use the map search to try and track those down. So this will be something you guys can use no matter what kind of properties you're searching for. Always make sure that your own listings do actually have the correct mapping. Just as a kind of side note here, every once in a while we do end up finding some listings that'll be just radically mapped incorrectly. It's always important to recognize that you are still going to be the only person that's responsible for making sure that your listings are actually appearing in the system correctly. We did have, oh, I guess they did fix it already. We did have a listing recently where they had put in the property with the address that was just shy of the full address. It was missing the street type. And so it was just like, such and such Kentucky instead of being such and such Kentucky Drive. And subsequently, that property ended up getting moved all the way over here to just shy of Lexington. It was a little bizarre, but lo and behold, it was just a matter of the system automatically tagging where that was going to be located. And the agent didn't bother to go back and check it until we got contact with them and told them, hey, there's a issue with the mapping. It's saying that it's supposed to be in Owasso or Osage or wherever it was, and it's out in Kentucky. So make sure that it's physically located properly. We have been noticing that most of the listings are staying within the state, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you guys actually have it dropped in the pin dropped in the right spot. So always double check it. Always make sure that that's correct before you guys actually move forward with saving that listing and putting it out into the public. Anyway, that being said, if the properties are physically mapped correctly, then we shouldn't have an issue actually using our map search to try and track those properties down. So there's a variety of different ways for us to actually do that. At the moment, the only criteria that I have put in here is just that it's looking for active listings. So when I go over here to the map, I can see that I've got a bunch of different properties showing up on the screen. If I zoom out far enough, it's going to clump everything together into little collections. Then I would have to click on that and it'll zoom me into that area. But if you guys are zoomed out and want to zoom in, it'll zoom in to a certain point where you guys can actually see all of these little pins dropped. So all of these little green dots on here are actually indicating where a property is located. As we zoom in, the neighborhood names will be popping up. And eventually, if we zoom in far enough, you'll actually start seeing these little kind of look like teeth, really. The little lines showing up where it's showing the parcels. Now, when I zoom in, you can see them just a little bit clearer. We've got those little rows of houses here going on. And I wanted to point out, as you zoom in further, you're going to start noticing that Google, in this case, has actually added on some gray outlines for where the properties are physically located. So not even just within the parcel, but literally where there's a building on that particular property. Now, I would always suggest that you guys take these with a grain of sand. This was something that was made by a computer. If I switch my map over to the satellite view, for instance, we can see that these houses certainly are pretty close together, but they are not actually touching like it seems to imply with our little gray outlines that we have here. So if you guys are interested in switching over between the map and satellite view, you can do so over here on the side. You can also add the terrain on the map view, which of course doesn't do much because Oklahoma is flat. Oh, here we go. Here we've got some texture. If I go down here to Turkey Hill, oh, I'm sorry, Turkey Mountain, it's got the texture there as well. I'm from Colorado. This is a glorified hill, but still beautiful. If we switch this over to the satellite view, an important note about the satellite view is that when you change it over to the satellite view, it should automatically add the labels on there. This was actually something that we asked for them to change. Lo and behold, whenever you guys used to get to the satellite view, it would just be empty. It was just the satellite imagery. No labels, no idea what this is, this large road, this road is, who knows. We switched this up to have the labels be the automatic option. So now you guys should be able to use satellite view in conjunction with all of the proper labels for the roads that are there. So I usually suggest that people stay on map. And if you guys want the terrain to be turned on, cool. But the map view just in general is going to be a little bit better for if you guys have a situation that you don't have particularly fast internet connections or anything like that. The map view is going to save you a lot of strain on your network connection. It's just something that I have to mention. I had that in my notes because when I went out to Durant, it was either Durant or Ada to do some training. That was one of the things that they mentioned is just, they hated the satellite view literally just because of the fact that if they clicked on something, they would have to wait forever. I don't know if you can even see it when it tries to do it on mine, but it like stays gray for a moment. It stays gray for a lot longer if you guys are on a really bad internet connection, or slow, I should say, not bad, not objectively bad. It's just what's available. Anyway, that's enough for our map options. We do have a plus and minus to zoom in and out. Next, we're going to be talking about all the stuff up here at the top. So if I have a client that's actually interested in a very specific location, the map search allows me to use a radius tool where we can actually just click and drag from a central point, and we can see all of the properties within that shape. We also have a rectangle tool. So if there was a block area that they wanted to use, we could just draw that around there. We also have a freehand polygon tool, which allows us to just click and drag. And notice this is just following the shape that my mouse is drawing. Just keep in mind that that freehand tool does have a couple major caveats to it, including if you guys need to make any adjustments to it, there might be a lot of segments in there. So like if I wanted to try and adjust this corner, I have to kind of like try and wiggle my dot to be on that spot so that I can make the adjustment that I needed to make. That might be a little bit cumbersome. I'm going to hold the cursor over the red dot there and just do delete shape. And there's also an option available called draw polygon. This is going to be a little different than the freehand polygon because this is kind of like a conspiracy theorist's board. We put a pin as soon as I move my cursor. So I'm not dragging in this case. I clicked once to drop a pin. As I move my cursor, notice there's this faint blue line that's now following me around. If I click again, it drops another pin. It solidifies that line. So now this line that I was drawing earlier is now solidified, and there's still a faint blue that's following from the new pin that I dropped. Click again, drops a pin, click again, 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 and then just come back to the start, and I'm good to go. One of the benefits of using this freehand polygon tool, or the regular polygon tool, is that if I need to make any adjustments to this, I can just grab a corner and just drag that. So if I needed to adjust the shape there, if I wanted to add another angle here, I can actually just click somewhere on a line, and now I can actually make a shape from there, there, draw those shapes back in there again. There you go. So you can get really fancy with however you guys are designing this. But again, it's a lot easier to use. And then of course, if worst case scenario, you guys don't end up liking the shape, again, that red dot allows you to delete that individual shape. But you also have the option to just do clear all shapes, which is this eraser up here at the top. It just gets rid of all the shapes at the same time. We mentioned before that there was a layers button. This layers button is going to be available on this map as well. So if you guys wanted to check what the zip code was, the unified school district was, what the Tulsa flood zones were, if you guys even just wanted to zoom in enough, as soon as you can see those parcels, so the little lines indicating where the parcels are, you guys can also add in the FEMA flood zones as well, just in case you guys needed to check that. All right. I'm going to clear all of those off. Leave the parcel one checked. And we also have another option. So let's say that I do end up drawing on my map, and then I'm just kind of exploring other parts of the map at the same time. My client told me, well, this is the area that I wanted to live in. Here we are exploring something down here in Sapulpa. If I click on this recenter option, it's going to zoom me back into wherever it was that I had initially searched for. That zoom function is also going to work if you guys had searched for a specific location. So if I was looking in Ada, and I click on my map, and I'm looking at all those properties, then I'm kind of trying to find other things a little bit further down. Even without a shape being drawn, if I hit that recenter button, it's going to zoom me back to wherever it was that I was initially looking at listings. Right. So that's about it for our map search function. There is also a jump address option. So this is effectively just, I need to move to this specific location on the map, type in the address, hit enter, and there you go. You got zoomed in, we're all set. Now I can actually start adding shapes to my map up here, whatever. Now, I wanted to point out something else that's kind of just more a logical thing. So this isn't actually a map function, but just make sure that you guys aren't shooting yourself in the foot on this. If you do end up having a drawing on the map, and then you have something that's going to be contradictory, like in this case, I drew something on the map here in Tulsa, but on my criteria, the only listings that I'm going to see in is in Ada, that could pose a problem to me finding results. I'll be honest, oftentimes when we end up having people get in contact with us with service issues, questions about certain functions in the system, one of the very first things that we're going to be checking is what are the criteria that you already have now? Because if it turns out that you have a bunch of bad criteria in here, or maybe some things that are contradictory, that could be an issue. We also will occasionally get phone calls where people are not finding comparable properties. Oftentimes, it really just boils down to there not being any comparables, but there is always the possibility that you guys might be looking for something and you've got maybe a price range that's going to be outside of what the other specifications are that you put in, or you put in a school district in one spot and then that doesn't match the information in another spot. Sometimes it makes perfectly logical sense. Like there's a Lattice school district that happens to have overlap with Ada. So we can see that even though this is not the school district of that city, there is still some it's kind of the Venn diagram, the overlap is there. But next, let's actually talk now about our results. So I'm going to clear this all out. We're going to just go ahead and put in a practical search. So we'll do 250 to 350. We'll do that 3+ bedrooms, and I'll say Ada. I think we got a couple matches there. Perfect. All right, so I'm going to head to my results page. And we mentioned before that there's going to be the MLS numbers over here on the side. You can see that most all of these were entered in 2022. We got one that's still here from 2021. We can see our addresses over here on the side. It's important to note that the MLS number is going to bring you into the listing, whereas if I click on the address for the property, it's actually just going to show me the map. Now, in addition to the map being found on this link here, there's also going to be a map button over here to the left and a photos button to the left of that. The map is going to be on every single listing that you find in the system, but you may not always see this view photos button over here to the side. If there is no listing photos, that photo icon will not be there. And just as a heads up, because we have been getting a lot of reports about this recently, listings do not have to have photos. We are thinking about changing that rule just because, fortunately, some people are trying to take advantage of some of the data syndication issues with not sharing photos. But Photos are potentially going to be required in the future, but currently the only photos that are actually required in the system is if you put in an auction listing. If you put in an auction listing, you have to have the primary photo of the property, and it has to have the word auction emblazoned on the top of that. Every other listing in the system does not require photos. I also wanted to point out some icons over here on the right-hand side of the screen. There is a history option. This is actually going to open up a new window in which it's going to show any of the previous listings for this property, as well as any of the tax record for this property as well. So if you guys find yourself in a situation where you've got property that you're kind of curious about, like, wait a second, I just saw this on the market last year, click on the to history, and you can find out whether or not that was the same one. I also wanted to point out when you guys are in that to history, it's not only going to show any of the previous listings for the property, as well as any price changes or when it pended or when it expired, etc. But it's also going to show those public records, the tax record details, as well as any of the mortgage history details. All of this information that we just have gone through is also going to be available in the listing itself. We've got a tax tab, photos tab, the histories tab, and there's also, again, those parcel maps and flood maps that we saw the same on the tax record information. But back to my results. The next icon over is going to be the Start a Transaction button. I'm actually going to start a transaction on this Woodland Drive one. This is going to open up a transaction in the system transaction desk. One of the benefits of having that button available to you is that this is actually going to take the details from that particular listing and add that into a transaction for me automatically. So in this case, if I was on the selling end, I would do residential sale, add me as the selling agent. Here's our MLS number from this particular listing. So when I hit create, it's going to take all of the information that it can from that listing. So here's the photo from the listings photos. Here's the address and everything. Here's the legal description. Here's even the price for the property that was initially put in. If I go to the third step here under the contacts, I've got Tisha Rainey. I've got her brokerage. All of that information got automatically imported. And then, of course, if there was any additional documents that they had added, so like in this case, we've got a invoice, I guess, lead-based paint, as well as the property condition disclosure, all of that information gets automatically added to my transaction, so I don't have to go save the information and then come back and add it to this. So it just makes it a lot easier to deal with. You guys don't have to quite go through as much trouble as you might have to if you're using a different system outside of our MLS. Now, in addition to the starting a transaction, all of the listings in the system, except those that are in some way exempt, like if they've got a disclosure, or excuse me, a disclaimer or exemption of some kind, they should all have a disclosure put on there, the property condition disclosure. This is a finable offense. So if you guys have noticed that maybe we've been a little bit more aggressive about reminding people of it, it's because we need to make sure that those are all available. Again, this is something that people have been kind of taking advantage of. So I would strongly suggest that you guys make sure that all of your listings have those property condition disclosures and make sure that those are available to other agents, again, for the cooperation and compensation that the MLS is meant to provide. But if you guys need to check those documents, you guys will find those with each listing. There's going to be a little view documents icon. When you click on that, it'll show you a list of all of those particular properties listing documents, and you can click on that property condition disclosure and find out more about it within there. So the next set of icons over, which unfortunately in this case, it looks like this column is empty. This is going to be the open houses. It does look like a little door icon. In fact, actually, just to show you what it looks like, it's this little icon right here. So if it does have an open house that's been added into Matrix for that property, you guys can actually see when that is. There's also going to be another icon over here to the right. Let me just switch this to, we'll just do Bixby because I can guarantee that there's going to be at least one. Oh, we got the open houses. Perfect. Yeah, so here's our open house icon. Then let's try a broken arrow. There we go. All right, so here we got a listing with the open house and also a virtual tour. So the virtual tour icon is going to look like a little film reel. When you click on that icon, it's going to bring you to whatever the agent had initially used as the uh, virtual tour for that particular property. Now, this can be a variety of things. Like in this case, it just happens to be that this property has used a slideshow to show it off. And it's not enough windows for me. Close out of that one. Let's try a different property. Oh, here's another slideshow option with some details about the property. It's notable that all of these are going to be uh, unbranded. They have to be unbranded legally. We cannot use any listing virtual tour that's actually got some kind of branding on there. If we find one that does, we have to report it. This can be virtual doll houses. It can be these tour factory slideshows. It can be a video if you wanted. Again, just make sure that anything that you guys use is going to be an unbranded virtual tour. So it looks like in this case, none of these actually include any details about the listing agent or their office. All right. And then finally, we have the last icon over here. This is going to be the RPR icon. Now, RPR is a tool that we actually have a whole 2-hour or 3-hour in-person class on. And it's a fantastic tool. I can't stress enough how useful this could be. If you guys do end up having any need for answering questions of a client that has just a bunch of random questions like, what's the annual rainfall? How many days of sunshine? What are the demographics of that area? What's the quality of life like? All of that information can be found on here. You can find out what the score is for, that's maybe not a particularly great score for that area. Let's just, that's actually going to be the same for all of these since I used Broken Arrow. But anyway, RPR has a lot of really cool details. It's got tax record information, listing data. It's got the climate change meter so that you guys can actually find out what the climate change is going to be like for this particular property over a potentially 30-year mortgage, whether or not there's going to be more flood likelihood or there's a whole bunch of different things on here. It's incredibly useful. Make sure to give it a check out because it is actually a tool that's been made by the National Association of Realtors. So if you guys find yourself in a situation where you needed to find out the history of a property or how many owners it's had or what the specifications are, or again, information about the neighborhood to find out like how many properties are available or uh, whether or not everybody's employed, how many properties are owned versus rented, all of that information can be found in RPR. It's called the Realtor Property Resource for a reason. But again, those icons are going to be appearing for pretty much every listing. If you guys do find yourself in a situation where you're looking at a listing and you're like, oh, I want to see those icons again, because I remember there was one that was going to be useful. If you just scroll down, underneath the photo for the listing is going to be all those same icons that we saw before. Did you look at that? This house looks like it's coming straight from a black and white cartoon. Anyway, all right, so I'm going to head back to my search results. One of the other things that I wanted to mention about our search results page is that we do have the opportunity to rearrange all of this as well. So let's say that when I was going through and adding my criteria into the system, I was searching for just houses. Maybe that's the only thing I ever deal with. I don't do any condos or townhouses, factory built or anything like that. I'm only going to be working with traditional single family residence houses. If I go to my results page, there's going to be a whole section here, this whole column right here that's actually just referring to its property subtype. When I come up to the top, I can click on the blank space in that gray area there, and then I can remove that column because if this is not something that I need, because every single one is going to be a house, I can just take that information away so that I'm only focused on the information that's not redundant. Another thing that we can do is, let's say that I wanted to add in the acreage for the property. I can click on the blank space next to address, do insert column. This is going to show me all of the different fields that we can use to search by. Now, one of the cool things about this is that we can just add in any of these columns on here and it'll display the information. So in this case, I wanted to do acres. Oops. Acres, apply. And now I've got an extra column of information that's just the acres. If I wanted to sort by that column, I can actually just click on the header for it, and that'll allow me to sort by that particular column. Next, we also have the opportunity, if we didn't want to just click on things, we could actually click and drag to rearrange where things are located. So if I wanted to maybe move this next to square footage, put the address before the school district, we can rearrange all of that. I did want to point out that if you do end up rearranging anything, it is not going to remember that tomorrow. It'll remember it maybe for the rest of today, but that's not going to be a permanent change. If you do end up rearranging this and want to keep those changes, it's going to be up at the top right corner. We've got a little gear icon. When you click on that, you can do set current display, sort order, and count per page as my search starting default. This way, when you guys come back to do a search later, you guys can just have the exact same layout, the exact same sort, the exact same functions available to you. Makes it a lot easier to use, makes you guys have a little bit easier time trying to get into just the information you're actually interested in. Now, in addition to just saving it as the default, let's say that I didn't want to use this as my default, but I at least wanted to maintain this view for use later. There is actually a manage display button here that allows us to give a name to each of the different layouts that we set up. So if I liked the way that this was set out, I just wanted to call this house search, for instance. I can save as a copy. Okay. And this will actually add it under this display function right here. So what this is doing is it's actually saying my : house search. So I just gave it a specific name. And when I go under this drop down here for the display, I can see that there's a bunch of other properties that are showing here that say my : and then whatever the name is of the search that I created, or the layout that I created, excuse me. So if I was getting ready for showings, for instance, I've got that managed display where I went through, I put in all the information that I wanted and then saved it. And now I can go back to that at any given moment by clicking on my showings. This way it has everything laid out in the same order that I wanted it to be. Maybe if I wanted to get rid of something, I can even save that. But this way I can see all of my showing contacts, my list agent full name, their phone number, etc. So if I had collected a whole bunch of listings together that a client might be interested in, I can just quickly go through and say, all right, this one's in showing time, realtor remarks, call agent, Corbin Smith. I need to get in contact with Corbin and let them know something. I got a agent or client that's interested in property, blah, 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 good to go. So you can really customize these a lot. I would suggest that if you guys have not been using the display functions, to give it a try. And the main reason why I recommend that is going to be down here at the very bottom. So we've talked already about how to find our listings. We've talked a little bit about how to rearrange the layout. We've also talked about how to sort these so that we can see which ones have the most bedrooms, most bathrooms, et cetera, et cetera. You can switch the sort order up here at the top. But once we actually find the listings that we want, and we need to actually get those to either a sheet of paper for us to print off or to a client for them to take a look at, that's actually where these checkboxes come into play and these actions down at the very bottom of the screen. So if we need to send something off to someone, we're going to check some checkboxes. You notice that all of these options down here at the bottom have now opened up. So if I wanted to send this off to a client, I can hit email, and it's going to send the listing details. So not just the layout that I just saw, but the listings details out to a client. We can put in the email in a couple different ways. We can either enter just the email address, or you guys should probably try considering a new contact. The new contact function is actually going to allow you to keep track of all of the listings that you've sent to a specific client. on top of the fact that it's also going to allow that client to interact with those listings. And that means that they can actually save things as favorites, they can run their own searches. All of that's going to be in that one home that we talked about earlier. So you may remember when we were talking about the my information at the very beginning of class, making sure you had the right name in there, making sure you had the right phone number in there, so on and so forth. All of that was to make sure that if we do end up sending something off to a client, that information is going to be showing correctly for them. So they can interact with it, they can search within the one home system, and your information is always going to be present at the very bottom right of that screen for them. So saving them as a contact is a very beneficial thing to you. Make sure that you guys are doing that at every opportunity. And again, it's going to give you a create a new contact button anytime you guys can actually create a contact, or anytime you could interact with the contact, I should say. Make sure that you add in a subject and an email body that's going to make sense. It's already got my signature down here at the bottom, and I can send that off. Now, the search function is actually already built into the top here. So if you guys are sending to a contact you've already created, you guys can just start typing in their name, click on it, and send it off. Good to go. We also have a print function. The print function is actually going to have a lot of different uses. One of the things that I like the most about it is that all of my customized layouts that I had just been messing with are also available here. So if I actually wanted to print off my showings information or maybe my house search layout, I could just select that item, hit print to PDF and preview, or even just hit that print button. And it's going to show me all of the information. And notice this is in the exact same layout that I wanted it to appear in. So we've got our acres over here. We don't show that it's a house. We have the school district a little bit after the address. All of that information was something that I customized for myself. Now, in addition to all of the customized versions, we also have 5 that are going to be agent specific. These are things that could potentially include information that's proprietary or information that's not meant to be consumed by the public. So just make sure that whenever you're printing off any of those agent options, that you're only going to be using that internally. That's meant for only MLS members to view that. We also have a section down here for client versions of the exact same reports that we saw up above. So if you do want to print off one of these reports and it has great information and you like the layout, there's a client version that's not going to include any of the things that a public should not be seeing. Finally, down here at the bottom, we've got Quick CMA, which is the old version. Got the new Quick CMA. Then we've also got a 3-up comparison. Now, if you remember from earlier, if you control click on items on a list like this, you can actually combine multiple items at the same time. It's command click for those of you on a Mac. But I can click on one CMA, hold down the control key or command key and click on the other one. When I hit print to PDF, it's actually going to put both of those together onto one PDF for me. So really handy. You guys can combine that in multiple different ways. If I wanted to do client summary or client single line and then client full as well, we can actually get just a sheet at the very top that shows us the 3 listings that I found. And then each individual property will have its own individual page. So pretty easy. I like the print function. The only thing that you guys really need to know about this print function, besides what you can do with it, is over here on the right-hand side, select either client full or agent full, and check the checkbox here that says print with rollouts. This is the only thing that you actually have to do on here, is that if you guys are getting in to print something off, make sure you click on agent full or client full, and then do print with rollouts. Now, the only reason why I mentioned that is because if you get into any of these listings and they have photos or if they have any extra rooms in there, without the print with rollouts option, it will not show any of those additional rooms and it will not show any of the photos for the property. So always make sure that that's checked. If you check it once, the system will remember it forever, so you don't have to worry about it ever again. Just make sure that it's checked. All right, I'm gonna head back to my results. We have a couple other buttons down here at the bottom that we're just kind of going to skip over. We've got the CMA report. This is great if you guys have a CMA that you need to put together. It's the comprehensive version of this quick CMA. We've got a directions button that allows us to kind of navigate between those three listings. There's some extra options in here. We don't cover this anymore because pretty much everybody has GPS. Not everybody does, but almost everybody does. So most of the time, people don't need this function anymore. It might be handy if you guys are going to remote locations though. So just keep that in mind if you guys are working rurally, or if you guys need to send directions to a client that's maybe particularly not savvy with technology. We've also got stats and export. These are both great if you guys need to get statistics about the properties that you found, or export, which allows you guys to send everything off to an Excel spreadsheet. If that doesn't sound of any interest, don't worry. They don't get used too often, but they're very handy if you need them. We also have a quick CMA button. This is going to look a little different than that CMA that I used earlier. This one actually is the new version, the quick CMA 8.3 or whatever. This is actually going to show you guys a little bit more visual feedback for your clients, so that it's actually got the icons above each of the different elements you're searching by. I find this is just a little bit easier for people to digest because they'll be like, oh, square footage. Oh, I see what it's talking about. Bedrooms. Got it. Full bath. And then, of course, I just love that whoever ended up designing this was like, full bath. It's a full bathtub. Half bath. I've sawed my bathtub in half. That's, anyway. First of all, the water's going to be pouring out of it. The tub is not closed, so it's going to be pouring out. Terrible design. Would not recommend that bathtub. Anyway, finally, we have a showing time button. In case you guys haven't noticed our news that we've been trying to make sure everybody is aware of, we are actually officially getting rid of Sentry Key showing service, not Sentry Key the lock boxes. This does not affect the lock boxes, but the Sentry Key showing service is going away. We are going back to just using showing time. So when you guys are looking at a particular search, let me jump back into my search that I used over here. We do have the option to just click on showing time. It's going to grab the details for those particular properties, and I can start scheduling in a tour. This is going to be, at least when you're looking at the search results, a showing tour that you're establishing. But if you do have a particular property that you found and they actually want to use showing time, you do have the option to just go into the listing and schedule an individual appointment with the showing time icon underneath there. But back to my results. That's it for our actions. We also have an option here for refine. And what refine is going to do is allow us to see a specific contact and whether or not we've actually gone through and sent them any of these particular listings. So just to illustrate that, I'm going to go back to my actions, use the email function. I'm going to send this to George Foreman because I know beyond grills, he needs to have a place to set up his grills. So we've sent those off to him. If I go over to this refine option, let's say that I've come in the next day and I've run this same exact search and I'm like, oh, you know what? This one actually seems like something that George might like. I can check that checkbox. Wait a second. Before I send this off to him, go down here to refine, click view as, click on his name, and you chose the wrong one. Click on his name and you can see when it was that you emailed those listings to him. Just as a heads up, if you guys don't use this refine option, there is always the opportunity for you to accidentally send the same listing twice to a client, which could be a problem. Next item over, clear this out. We're going to go to save. This is where we can save a new search. So if we wanted to actually save this search for perpetuity, I can do so by doing this new saved search option. The only thing that's actually required on this page is the name of the search. You can connect it to a contact if you would like to, and then you can even save that as a favorite to your home page. We recently got that almost tripled. It used to only allow you to do 10 favorite searches, and now we have 25 available, which is great. We also did the same thing with this recent searches. It used to only display 15 of them. Now we've got 30. But on the favorite searches, just as a heads up, you guys do have the option to jump into those, see if they were connected to a client. This one was, and you can see that the refine is already set. But saving those is really handy. I can't stress enough how useful it is to save searches if you guys are working with a particular client, or even just kind of working in your own stomping grounds. If you guys have a very clearly defined area that you work within, that's a great way to make sure that you guys are doing it right. There's also a new auto email function. This is going to allow us to take whatever the search was that we've created and turn that into an auto email for a particular client. Now, the auto emails really play out like this. I'm going to establish the criteria for my search. It's actually defined down here. I've got a criteria for my search, and whenever a new listing gets added into the system that happens to follow all of the criteria that I've put in for the search, that listing will be sent off to my client automatically. That's what the auto email function serves. So the auto emails are going to automatically grab any of those listings and send them out. Now, the first send that you do may end up including more listings, but depending on what your schedule is, you guys can either clump them all together into daily emails, monthly emails, or you guys can actually use this ASAP option. Now, with the market being what it is right now, I would strongly suggest that you guys use that ASAP option, even just under normal circumstances. But right now, if you end up doing one of those daily options or monthly option, what could end up happening is that the client won't end up seeing some listing until it gets sent off the next day, but it might already be that there's somebody that's gotten it earlier in the day because it was entered in last night and they had the ASAP option on and got it within 15 minutes, and they're already talking to the listing agent about an offer, and your client just received it the next morning. So ASAP is the best choice for right now. In the regular version of the class, and especially when it wasn't quite so chaotically hopping in the market, we used to mention the concierge mode. This is a great choice if you guys have a client that's extremely picky. But beyond that, it's actually just going to slow down the process. So I would typically steer people away from using that concierge mode unless you have one of those clients that's like, look, I don't want a house that faces that direction and has the kitchen on such and such side of the house. Like if it's a criteria that your client has given you that they don't want to see houses of a certain type, but it's not something that you guys can build into a search function, that's when the concierge mode becomes helpful. Because the rest of the time, you just want to get that email sent off and just forget it. You don't need to go in there and manually approve each listing that needs to go out. All right. I'm going to cancel out of this. There we go. And we also have a speed bar shortcut. Again, we're not talking about the speed bar, but you guys can investigate that by clicking on that little question mark and seeing what the speed bar shortcuts can do for you. They're very helpful. I don't think that there's too many people that use them, but it might be worth exploring if you have an opportunity. We also have carts. I don't talk about the carts in class, but they're available if you need them. So I'm going to actually transition now to talk about our clients. We've talked a little bit about them already. At the beginning of the class, we got our information updated. So when our clients get stuff from us, they know who we are, what we're talking about, etc. We've talked about finding listings and then sending them on to the clients with those actions. Let's now actually go check out where all of our client information is stored. That's actually going to be under My Matrix, and then go down to Contacts. Under the Contacts section, we're going to see just a massive list of all of our different contacts that we've added into the system. It's going to show their name, their email, what category they are, if we've actually tagged them as a seller or buyer or whatever. If we've created an auto email for them or created a saved search for them, when they last were used on our end, so whether or not I had created them and then never sent anything to them, or created them and sent them something just recently. But we also see any carts that we've created, any notes that they've added to listings. Notice I said notes that they have added to listings. So this is actually stuff that they're commenting on specific listings. They've also got favorites. Again, favorites that have been added to listings. So if they were doing a search or you sent them something that they liked, they can actually favorite that and you'll be able to see that in this contacts page. One of the things that we get a lot of complaints about, we've actually been trying to work with CoreLogic, who makes Matrix, to get this a little bit more user-friendly, is that it would be beneficial for us to be able to see anytime somebody has actually saved a favorite. The only place we can see that right now is actually to go into my Matrix and then contacts. And if somebody has recently saved something as a favorite or added a note or discarded something, it'll be bold and a little bit darker blue. So it kind of looks a little bit more noticeable. But if you guys do end up wanting to check those favorites, you can either click on the number itself, and that'll pull up all of those listings. Or when you guys are looking at the contact themselves, so like if I just click on their name, click on their name, we can see their auto email, carts, CMAs, sent email, searches, one home searches, and even reverse prospecting for this client. Up here at the top right, we've got our favorites, any things that they didn't like, and any notes that they've added. The notes, I should actually point this out to you guys. The notes are actually kind of hard to find. Whenever you guys click on that notes section, it's actually this little post-it note looking icon here. You click on that and it's actually going to show whatever they added, whatever text they added to that note. You can effectively have a conversation in here, but just as a heads up, on the client's end, they actually have to go back to the listing that they were viewing in order to be able to see the actual content of that conversation that you're having. It's a little bit of a bizarre twist. I'm not sure why they have it set up that way. I think it would be better to have like just a general chat service, which coincidentally is actually exactly what the MLS Touch app has. If you guys are using that, strongly recommend it. But you do have the opportunity to communicate with clients this way as well. That is pretty much it for our class today. I did want to mention just a couple things as well. Again, we're going to be sending some videos that cover some of the extra tutorials that we have in Matrix. But if you guys find yourself in a situation where you're not finding listings or you're having some trouble with the system or it's not doing things that you guys are wanting it to do, just get in contact with us over at the service desk. We're more than willing to field any questions that you guys might have, any suggestions, feedback, feature requests, anything that you guys need in Matrix or any of the other systems that are member benefits, just give us a call. You can send us an email as well. We have somebody that's actually checking our email all the time. So even if you send something at a Saturday night, maybe don't expect a particularly fast response, but someone will notice that before you guys get back to work on Monday. We also are going to be starting up a emergency outage option. Just as a heads up, that's only going to be if there is an outage. We're not going to have 24/7 help desk phone numbers yet. I mean, at least not unless you guys want to dramatically increase your dues. But we will still have somebody on call so that if there is some outage during the weekend or after hours, we'll have somebody there to be able to field those phone calls. But in the interim, please make sure to funnel everything into the emails or just give us a call during our weekday hours, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5:30. That's it for our class today. Again, thank you guys so much for joining us. If you do end up having any issues, reach out to us. Otherwise, stay safe, enjoy this beautiful rainy weather, and hopefully we will see you guys soon. Oh, and I guess one last time, if you guys wouldn't mind, hit that raise hand button just so I know you guys were here at the end. And I will get the CE credit sent off today. Just a heads up, if you guys did end up missing any more than a couple, or I think it's technically we have it set to 5 minutes. If you guys missed any more than 5 minutes of class, even if it was just disconnects or something like that, fortunately, we won't be able to give CE credit just because of how we have it set up with OREC. But We will still get that recording sent off. So if you guys missed any information, kind of wanted to go back to it, you guys can do that in that recording. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and close up shop. Again, let us know if you guys have any issues, but otherwise, stay safe.